So, how do we narrow the gap and start benefiting from the success of gender parity? Huge question here. Companies must turn good intentions into concrete action to address both gender and racial disparities. Well, our next guest is doing his part by creating a platform for empowering black professionals to become millionaires. Joining us now is Brian Lee, who's the founder of Black Health and Wealth. Brian, great to have you here with us today. Before we get into the platform, how have you addressed gender disparity and helped people find a voice?
Yeah, definitely. I think it starts with doing things without being asked, being an ally without someone explicitly asking you to do so. So one of the things I did at the last organization, and my last organization, is I partnered with Google with their I Am Remarkable program, and I worked with them to create a workshop for the entire New York office for all the women to go over to Google for half a day and talk about how they can speak to their accomplishments, how they can sell themselves, and the value of what they bring to an organization, with the goal of them obviously increasing their income, receiving more growth opportunities, and really progressing within corporate America. And that's something that I stepped up to just on my own. No one else did it, and it's just something that I saw that needed to be done. And I did it. So I think that's one thing that people can do is just step up. You don't always have to wait for women to ask for help. If you see something that needs to be done and you can do it as an ally, do it. And then also, I think another big thing is just access to information. And
Hmm.
so making sure that the women are in the meetings, they're in the conversations that are specific to their projects, their work, and then also that you're giving feedback to them so that they know how they can develop and progress, making them a full part of the ecosystem. And so there's a lot of ways that you can do things that we can do to help. I can keep going on and on. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
those are a couple things.
so I want to dive into that just a little bit more. I do want to hear about
hmm
your background, your journey as well first before we get to that. Share your experiences. And I mean, look, I used to work in a subset of the advertising industry. You look around, oftentimes you're the only one that may look like you if you are a minority in the room. So walk us through your experience and the struggles that you faced, particularly climbing the corporate ladder in this industry.
Definitely. So advertising is very challenging, especially when it relates to the Black community. And so when you're talking about entry levels, and especially if you're going into an ad agency, in most cases you're going to have to be in the biggest expensive city like New York, LA, San Francisco, or Chicago for very little pay. And so for those Black people that don't come from families with money, it can be particularly challenging to even stay. Then you add on top of that, to your point, you're typically one of a handful of people, Black folks, in the entire company. And at those entry levels, you're dealing with managers that aren't that experienced and that aren't really that good. And so in many cases, they're rewarding people that look like them and sound like them. It may not be on purpose. That's just what happens. And so when you have someone like me, for me, I'm someone who, in many cases, I grew up in different environments. I like a lot of different things than my actual colleagues. And, my growth was negatively impacted at first because of that, because I didn't look and sound like other people. But I still was true to myself. Now I don't have those issues anymore because I'm in a leadership position, and also because I've clearly shown that I have a track record of success, and that when it comes to programmatic advertising, which is the part of advertising that I specialize in, I'm
Right.
probably one of the top minds in the industry. That being said, it should not be being successful, being able to have a job or put food on the table should not be that should not only be held for the few that are just so far ahead of the pack when
Right.
it comes to Black people, because that's not what we see across the board. But particularly those were some of the challenges that I had.
So with that in mind, you've pointed out that Black professionals, they make up 10% of college graduates, but less than 1% of Fortune 500 CEOs, only 3% of executive and senior manager level roles. That's according to a study by the Center for Talent Innovation. So talk to us about that statistic in particular, and if organizations understand that enough to put action behind reversing that trend.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that statistic shows that there's a disconnect when you have 10% of graduates, but only like less than 1% of Fortune 500 companies. Um, I think organizations, they really want to change it, but I think the big mishap, and I'm seeing it again even now, is that there's only a focus on the entry level, which is great. There's a focus on finding folks for college, which is great. But I think the bigger issue is the mid level.
Hmm.
One, because when you get the entry level people in, they don't have people in mid level that they're working with that look like them, that understand them, that can, communicate with them effectively,
Right.
and that aren't scared to, that can have real conversations. That's one. And then two, when we talk about leadership, the mid level is important too, um, because I think the organizations need to have programs that are developing leaders, mid-level leaders, into executive positions within the organization, providing clarity on what it takes. So not any what there's probably unwritten rules or expectations that are things that are expected from executives for people that get into that level that maybe some of the black community just doesn't understand because
Yeah.
there's so little. There's less than 1%. We don't have people in those higher organizations to let us know on the side, on the golf course or other areas, how
Right.
to get to those positions.
Brian, just very quickly, we only have about 15 seconds here. Let's talk about the platform, though. Black Health and Wealth. I request an invite. What happens?
Definitely. So you request an invite, and we're rolling out a series of educational programs for both professionals and entrepreneurs. So we're going to have personal branding, education. We're going to have education on e-commerce, education on leadership development, education on digital marketing. And we're really trying to provide a ecosystem for the Black community to educate themselves so that they're progressing within corporate America, and then ultimately progressing, if they're actually business owners, they can make sure that they have sustainable businesses.
I certainly want to check back in with you, Brian. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. Brian Lee, advertising exec and founder of Black Health and Wealth. Thanks so much for the time.